Let's begin this with a deep breath, letting every word flow naturally into your awareness, effortlessly integrating at every level. Imagine now each idea revealing itself in a way that feels familiar, almost as if you've always known this, but now it's being clarified and sharpened, bringing new depth to how you experience and interact with others. And as we explore this, you'll naturally begin to notice things about people, and perhaps even yourself, unfolding with surprising ease. You see, there are patterns in the way people speak, in how they move, how they express their inner worlds, to their outer words. One of these patterns is the blamer, that voice that seems to say, "It's your fault. If only you'd listen to me, everything would be perfect." Familiar, isn't it? We've all known someone like that. Perhaps you've even felt a touch of it yourself at times. And that's okay, because every behaviour has a purpose. The blamer, it's an armour, a mask, a fierce protector that stands guard over something soft and vulnerable inside. On the surface, the blamer seems strong, confident, even intimidating. But beneath that tough exterior lies a deep need for safety and control. The truth is, the blamer blames, not because they're powerful, but because they're afraid of feeling powerless. Isn't it fascinating how the human mind works that way? Now take a moment to imagine someone stepping into the blamer's stance. Picture them in your mind's eye, their words sharp, their posture rigid, their eyes focused outward, pointing fingers, shifting the responsibility away from themselves. You always do this. Why can't you ever get it right? Their goal isn't to harm, it's to protect, to regain a sense of control in a moment when they feel it slipping away. But here's the twist. Blaming, it's never about the person being blamed. It's about the one doing the blaming. It's a message that says, please don't look too closely at my own fear, my own insecurity. Let's focus on you instead. And now, as you begin to see that deeper layer, you naturally start to notice something powerful. Blaming, it isn't strength. It's a call for help disguised as a command. When you recognize the blamer, you're given a gift, a glimpse into their hidden world. You can see through the armour, past the accusations, and into the heart of what they truly need. When you understand that, you can respond in a way that transforms conflict into connection, judgment into curiosity. Imagine a blamer in your life, someone who's always quick to point fingers. And instead of seeing them as aggressive or difficult, you begin to wonder, what are they protecting? What fear or vulnerability lies just beneath the surface? The moment you ask that question, something shifts. Suddenly, their words lose their sting. Their power over you fades, because you're no longer reacting to their blame. You're responding to their unspoken need. Picture a workplace scenario. Your boss storms into the room. Why are these results so disappointing? You're not meeting expectations. The old reaction might be defensiveness, maybe frustration, but now, with your new perspective, you pause. You realize their words, they're less about you and more about their own anxiety. And with that realization, you might say something like, it sounds like you're really concerned about the direction that things are going. What would help you feel more confident about the next steps? Notice how the blame dissolves, how the conversation shifts from accusation to problem solving. It's almost magical when you know how to do this. The secret is to never fight the blame, but to redirect it. Not with force or logic, but with subtle shifts that guide the blamer into seeing themselves more clearly. You're not challenging them directly. You're inviting them to reflect, whatever making them feel exposed or threatened. Reframe blame as curiosity. When someone blames, respond with curiosity. Interesting. What do you think would have made the difference? Soften the conversation. Use language that lowers defences. It seems like this has been frustrating. What's really important to you here? Invite ownership without judgment. What do you think we could all learn from this situation? And here's the magic. Every time you do this, you're helping the blamer reclaim their power. Not the false power of control through blame, but the true power of self-awareness and choice. At the core of every blamer is a story, a belief formed long ago. Maybe it was a childhood where they were criticised and learned. The only way to avoid being hurt was to strike first. Or maybe they had lived in a world that felt chaotic, and blaming became their way of creating order. Healing begins when you help them to feel safe enough to lower the shield. Not all at once, but gently, in small moments of connection. For example, if you're working with a blamer, in a personal or therapeutic context, you might say, I wonder, what would happen if you didn't need to protect yourself so much? What might it feel like to trust yourself and others just a little more? Can you remember a time when you felt truly strong, without needing to control anyone else? Notice how these questions, they bypass the conscious mind, and they speak directly to something deeper. And as you ask these questions, you might find the blamer softens. Even if just for a moment, you've planted a seed, and sometimes that's all it takes. Because the unconscious mind knows exactly how to nurture the seeds it's ready for. Now, as you let all this settle, you might begin to notice how things seem a little clearer, a little lighter. You might start recognising the blamer stance in the world around you, in colleagues, friends, family. And each time you do, you'll remember. Blame, it isn't about fault, it's about fear. And it's not about power, it's about protection. And the greatest gift you can offer a blamer is the chance to feel truly seen and understood. Because once that happens, blame no longer makes sense. Not to them, not to you. And everything becomes just a little bit easier. And as you're here now, just listening, you might begin to realise there's something truly remarkable about the way the patterns work. How they're always there, shaping and guiding behaviour. Sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, until in a moment of clarity, something shifts. Suddenly, what once felt solid and fixed starts to soften. Old ways of seeing the world, they begin to blur. And in their place, new possibilities begin to emerge. Isn't it interesting how people, they can wear their beliefs like armour? How they hold tightly to certain behaviours, not because they want to, but because somewhere deep down, those behaviours, they once served them, protected them, kept them safe. And one of the most fascinating of these behaviours is the pattern called blame. Blame, so strong, so certain, like a shield raised high. It seems to push the world away, creating space, creating distance. But here's the secret. Blame, it isn't really about the other person at all. It's about holding on to a sense of control, when everything inside just feels a little too uncertain. It's not strength, it's disguise. A clever strategy, designed to keep vulnerability hidden, wrapped tightly beneath layers of certainty and accusation. And yet, what happens when you begin to see through the disguise? What happens when you realise that blame isn't a villain? It's simply a protector that's been working far too hard for far too long. Imagine now a moment where blame begins to dissolve, not because it's forced away, but because it's no longer needed. Imagine that shield growing lighter, almost weightless, until it gently slips from your hands. Can you feel the relief in that? The freedom that comes when you no longer need to defend, no longer need to push the world away. Because the truth is, blame was never about solving the problems. It was about avoiding something far more uncomfortable. The feeling of not being enough, the fear of failure, the vulnerability of being truly seen. But once you see it for what it is, blame loses its power. It's no longer a weapon, it's an invitation to something deeper, something more real. What if every time you notice blame rising, within you or around you, it became a signal, not to attack but to pause? To ask yourself, what am I really protecting right now? What's the fear, the insecurity, the hurt that needs my attention? And in that moment of reflection, everything changes. What felt like a wall becomes a doorway. What felt like conflict becomes an opportunity for connection. Here's the beautiful part. Once you recognise blame for what it is, you realise you have a choice. Not a hard choice, not a forced choice, but an easy, natural shift. Like turning your head to see something that was just out of view. You can choose to let go of blame, without judgment, without shame, and step into something far more powerful, responsibility. But not the heavy kind of responsibility that feels like a burden. No, this is different. This is the responsibility of freedom. Responsibility as the ability to respond, to create, to lead, to heal. And as you begin to embrace that responsibility, something remarkable happens. You stop needing to control others. You stop needing to prove your strength, because you no longer fear your own vulnerability. You no longer see it as a weakness. You see it for what it truly is, your most authentic, most powerful self. Think about it. Every time blame appears, whether in your own mind or in the words of others, it's an opportunity, an invitation, a signal that there's something more beneath the surface, just waiting to be discovered. And once you see it that way, you start to notice that blame becomes almost irrelevant. It's like an old habit you've simply outgrown. Imagine someone blaming you, pointing fingers, raising their voice. In the past, maybe, that would have triggered you. Maybe it would have pulled you into a defensive spiral. But not anymore. Now you recognize it for what it is. A call for connection disguised as an attack. A cry for help wrapped in the language of anger. And instead of reacting, you smile, calm, grounded, centered. You see through the words. You hear what's really being said beneath the surface. And you respond not with blame, but with understanding. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. And in that moment, you become the one who transforms the conversation. You become the one who leads. And here's the thing. As you begin to respond differently, something magical starts to happen. People around you, they start to change too. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. But over time, the ripple spreads. Your calm becomes their calm. Your curiosity becomes their curiosity. Your refusal to engage in blame creates space for something new, something real, something healing, something powerful. So almost as if by shifting your own stance, you're teaching others without saying a word that there's another way, a better way. And isn't that what true influence really is? Not forcing change, not demanding it, but embodying it so fully that others can't help but be drawn to it. So now, as these ideas settle deep into your awareness, you might begin to notice new beliefs forming effortlessly and naturally. Blame is a signal, not a solution. Every time blame arises, it's an opportunity to understand something deeper. Responsibility isn't a burden, it's a gift, a source of freedom and strength. True power comes from authenticity, vulnerability, and connection, not from control or blame. You have the ability to respond in any situation, not react, but respond from a place of calm, certainty, and strength. And as these beliefs take root, they'll begin to grow, quietly, steadily, day by day. You don't have to force it. Just trust the process is unfolding exactly as it should. Because once you've seen the world through this new lens, there's no going back. Every conversation becomes an opportunity. Every conflict becomes a chance to create something new. Every moment becomes a reminder that you hold the power, not to control others, but to lead yourself with grace, compassion, and strength. And isn't that a beautiful way to live? So imagine for a moment a storm on an open sea. The sky darkens, waves crash violently, and the wind howls, scattering everything in its path. In the middle of this chaos, there's a ship caught in the turbulence, tossed, turned, struggling to find its way. And just when it seems the storm might overwhelm it, there in the distance a light appears, a lighthouse, steady and unwavering. It doesn't fight the storm, it doesn't blame the waves or the wind, it simply stands there, calm, grounded, constant. The ship's captain, once lost in the storm, now has a point of focus, a guide. Suddenly, the chaos feels less threatening, not because the storm has disappeared, but because there's clarity, there's direction. The lighthouse doesn't control the sea, but it transforms the experience of the storm. And maybe, just maybe, that lighthouse is something you've always had inside you. A deeper part of yourself that doesn't get swept away by the storm of blame, conflict or chaos. A part that remains calm, centered and present no matter what is happening around you. Because blame is the storm. It pulls people in, spinning them around, throwing them off balance. But once you step into the lighthouse state, Once you become the steady light, you no longer need to fight the storm. You can simply be. Watch it rise, watch it fall, knowing the storm is temporary, and you are not. Now, let's wander into another place. Imagine a garden, your garden. It's vast and wild, filled with countless plants, some flourishing, some struggling for sunlight. Each plant in the garden represents a belief you've picked up along the way. Some were planted long ago, and you've nurtured them without even realizing it. Blame is like a stubborn weed. It spreads quickly, wrapping its roots around everything, choking out the more delicate plants beneath it. For a long time, that weed might have seemed like it belonged there. It might have even served a purpose, holding the soil together, when everything felt like it was falling apart. But now you're starting to notice it, noticing how it crowds out the space where something new, something better could grow. And here's the beautiful thing. You don't need to rip it out in a single moment. Just by noticing it, you're already beginning to loosen its hold. Day by day, choice by choice, the roots grow weaker, and in their place something new begins to grow. A belief that nourishes, that strengthens, that supports the life you truly want to live. Perhaps it's a belief in the responsibility as freedom. Perhaps it's a belief in vulnerability as strength. Perhaps it's a belief that every conversation is an opportunity for connection and growth. Whatever it is, you can feel it taking root now, quietly, naturally, a new kind of garden beginning to bloom. There's something else you might want to consider. Something simple yet profoundly powerful. Imagine standing before a mirror. For a long time, this mirror reflected blame, showing you only what was wrong, only what needed fixing in others. It felt like a kind of power, pointing that finger, shifting that responsibility. But over time it became heavy, didn't it? Exhausting. Because the more you blamed, the more trapped you felt in that reflection. Now imagine the same mirror suddenly transforms into a window. Instead of reflecting the same old patterns, it opens up to something much bigger, something filled with light, with possibility. Through that window, you begin to see the world differently, not as something to control or fix, but as something to understand, something to learn from, something to collaborate with. And maybe you've noticed the more you step away from blame, the more open that window becomes. The air feels lighter. The world begins to feel bigger. Possibilities that were once hidden, they begin to reveal themselves. And as you gaze out into this new world, you begin to realize something important. The blame you once held on to, it wasn't protecting you, it was limiting you. And now you're free to let it go. Life in so many ways is like a dance. Sometimes we lead, sometimes we follow, sometimes we stumble, trip over our feet, and laugh as we find our rhythm again. But here's the secret: blame. It's like sitting on the sidelines, watching the dance from far away. Arms crossed, pointing out every misstep and misbeat. It feels safe, distant, untouchable. But it's not living, it's not creating. Responsibility, on the other hand, is stepping onto the dance floor. Not because you've every step perfectly planned, but because you trust yourself enough to move, to flow, to adapt. And once you're in that dance, something magical happens. The missteps, they don't matter. The mistakes become part of the rhythm. You stop worrying about how it looks, and you start feeling the music. And isn't that what life is really about? Not control, but connection. Not blame, but collaboration. Not perfection, but presence. And the moment you step into that dance, blame becomes nothing more than a distant memory, just an old habit you've outgrown. And now, as these ideas continue to settle, you might begin to notice a sense of lightness, a sense that something has shifted. Or maybe it's something you'll notice later. An interaction that feels different, a conversation that flows more easily, a moment where blame once lived, but now it simply doesn't. It's like coming home after a long journey, coming back to a place that's always been yours, a place of strength, of calm, of quiet confidence, because deep down, you've always known the real power, it isn't in controlling others, it's in leading yourself, in responding with grace, with curiosity, with compassion. And now you've found your way back into that place. You can trust it was always there, no matter what storms arise, no matter what challenges come your way. That lighthouse, that garden, that window, that dance, they're all part of you now. Isn't it beautiful to know? You're already exactly where you need to be.